You're listening to episode 1 of the Point to Point NHL Recap Show. I'm Pascal Pryor, joined by Mark Howlerlach. Throughout the season, we'll be releasing episodes weekly with the biggest stories from around the NHL and the world of hockey. On today's show, we'll be giving you all the information you need going into the 2023-24 NHL season. Mark, first off, buddy, episode 1, how you feeling about this?
Pretty good, man. Definitely excited to do this. Haven't really been in connection with like a podcast in a couple of years now, and it didn't really end up working out. So I'm definitely excited to get going here it's going to be a really exciting season. Honestly, it's kind of a season where you don't really know what to expect. There's a lot of good teams heading in. Some good teams aren't going to make the playoffs. So definitely excited to see what the NHL has in store for us this season. It could be one of the best one yet that I've followed personally.
Yeah, I'm definitely pumped for the podcast. It's really just going to get us involved in really just following hockey and all the big stories every week. And as you were saying, the NHL, I think it's in a great place right now on a growth standpoint, especially globally. Of course, we just had that series in Australia. That was a pretty good hit outside of the ice factor, of course. But the NHL is in a great point. I think we're going to pick up a lot of fans, especially in the U.S. with going into year 2 of this new TV deal. So it's going to be great covering the NHL this season. So the NHL starts up less than a week now. Rosters are sort of getting finalized. You have some players going on the waivers. Some notable names: Ty Smith from Pittsburgh, and then from Ottawa, you have Jacob Bernard-Docker and Igor Sokolov. They all went on waivers. They all cleared, though. What do you think about these 3 players going on waivers for their respective teams?
To be honest with you, I'm kind of surprised that all 3 cleared waivers. I think there was definitely a chance that all 3 of them were not going to clear waivers, to be quite honest with you. Like looking at like Jacob Bernard-Docker and Ty Smith, like these guys are former first-round picks. I know they haven't really panned out in accordance to plan, like with Pittsburgh and Ty Smith. They obviously got him from New Jersey a year ago in that John Marino trade. They probably had some pretty high expectations for him, and he hasn't even been able to fully make the team in the first 2 years. Bernard-Docker's only played like limited time with the Sens, but I mean, they kind of brought back Hamonic this year, and it took away his spot, I feel like. Kind of surprised he went on waivers. Like I said, he's a first round pick, excuse me. And Igor Sokolov, I mean, like he was a guy who was an overage draft pick, but he's really blossomed in Belleville. And I thought he was going to be a part of like the Sens bottom 6. He's a big guy as well. I thought teams would definitely take a flyer on him. Like these guys too, it's not like we're talking about guys with huge cap hits, right? These guys are all on like their second contracts where they're making under $1 million. So I think that's what surprised me the most, especially in like a cap crunch league right now, that some team wouldn't take a chance on like these younger guys.
Yeah, for me, the Ty Smith one is not too surprising because when you look at that defensive core in Pittsburgh, you already have Carlson there, who like just got there, and then you have Letang, and they're both sort of more offensive-minded defensemen. So for Ty Smith to be in the NHL with that team, you're like he would be playing in a role that I don't think would suit him best. So I'm not surprised he got put on waivers, but it is a bit surprising that nobody picked him up because he is only 23 years old. He was a first-round draft pick, 17th overall. So like this is a guy, if you're on one of the bottom leagues in the team, like just take a flyer on him. It's a lottery ticket. If he pans out, great. If he doesn't, like you're not spending much money on him. You're not really losing that much, right? So I'm surprised nobody's picked him up for sure. But then for the Ottawa situation, man, like I don't get what Pierre Dorian's doing. You re-signed Travis Hamonic in the summer, right? You give him a full no-move clause. So with that no-move clause, he can't be sent down. And because of that, you put Jacob Bernard-Docker on waivers. But then most importantly, the one we haven't mentioned yet, put Lassie Thompson on waivers, and he ends up getting picked up by the Anaheim Ducks. Like this guy was a first-round pick in 2019. And he gets picked 19th
up. 19th overall, too.
You lose him for nothing to re-sign Travis Hamonic. Like, to me, it makes no sense. The amount of money and time that they've invested into Thompson and Bernard-Docker just to lose Thompson for nothing, it makes no sense to me. I really do not understand what Pierre Dorian's doing there. And then you also look at the Shane Pinto, what's going on with him right now. They don't have the money to re-sign him, and they go out and offer him a 1-year, $1 million deal. Like, absolutely spit in the guy's face.
For a guy who scored 20 goals, man. Like, I wouldn't be taking that either.
All they had to do was not re-sign Hamonic and not go out and sign Vladimir Tarasenko, and you're keeping Lassie Thompson, a guy that you've invested in, and you're getting Shane Pinto. But no, you decide to go re-sign Travis Hamonic for Who knows why? Only Pierre Dorian knows really why he did that. And then you go inside Vlad Tarasenko, and now you're having all these issues to start the season. And for Ottawa, like you're a team this year that if you don't take that next step forward, your fans are going to be really upset. Not to mention you just got bought by a new owner. Your owner's going to be pretty upset as well. So I'd keep an eye out there because if they have a really slow start to the season, I think that's a team where you could see the GM gone, coach gone within the first few months of the season.
I think there's definitely a lot of pressure on Ottawa. And even going back to what you're saying about Ty Smith, one team that I'm really surprised that didn't take a flyer on any of these defensemen is Erik Karlsson's old team in the San Jose Sharks. They obviously lost him as an elite defender. As of right now, I would say like Mario Ferraro is probably their best defenseman, and they're pretty thin back there. So I'm surprised they didn't take a flyer on last. Maybe they did for Lassie Thompson and they didn't get that waiver claim. But even Bernard Docker or Ty Smith, I'm surprised they wouldn't bring one of those guys in, even Ty Smith, just to run like even the second power play or something. A little bit confusing to me. And like even going over to Ottawa's guys, I think it's a little bit more mind-boggling because Ottawa had that run, right, where they went to the conference finals. They had a pretty decent roster, and then they decided they wanted to blow it up because their owner didn't want to pay anyone. So these guys, Lassie Thompson, Bernard Docker, Sokolov, these guys are top 2-round picks, and these are the guys that you're committing your rebuild to, right? Like these are the guys you're drafting in your rebuild. So it's kind of mind-boggling to see that a couple years later, they're just kind of willing to lose them for absolutely nothing. And honestly, I think they're lucky that they got through waivers, to be quite honest with you, because like I said, I think Sokolov's a pretty good player, man. I think he's going to be good in the AHL and potentially be called up eventually. Bernard Docker, yeah, I'd say him and Thompson hasn't been accordance to plan with their development. But I mean, you got to try at least get something back for these guys if you don't really want them in your plans. Like I don't understand it at all.
And it's not like they're old guys either. Like Bernard Docker's 23 years old, and then Lassie Thompson, he's 23 as well. So it's not like these guys are clearly like past. They should
Past
get
where
a
they
chance
could
with that
have a
team.
chance of even
Yeah,
like making the NHL, right? Like,
yeah, personally, I don't get those. I don't get what Ottawa's doing right now. But going forward, as we get closer to day one of the NHL season, day one's Tuesday, so we're getting pretty close to that. Right now, we're recording. It is Thursday, so about 4 or 5 days away. Do we think any other big names could be sent down, or any big pickups could be picked up from the waiver wire going forward here?
the one thing I just kind of have my eye on is what Tampa's going to do with their goaltending.
Yeah, same.
A lot of teams like are running with a 3 goalie system right now, at least, and they haven't put all of them on waivers. So they obviously have Jonas Johansson. I really wonder if the Leafs put Martin Jones on waivers, if he could end up in Tampa. You know what I mean? He's not as good as he used to be, but he's a guy who's got experience. And Tampa's D could probably make him look good for like a short period of time. I even wonder, honestly, like Montreal's in a situation where they have Allen Montembeault, Caden Primo. Primo's going to go through waivers now. He's on his second contract.
Yeah.
He can't just be sent down. I'm really curious to see what happens in Tampa Bay in the goaltending. They've obviously had a healthy Andrei Vasilevsky for years now, and he's carried them. So I'm curious to see who they end up getting, if they end up getting anyone, and how they kind of respond without him in the first 2 months of the season.
Yeah, I think for sure Martin Jones is going to go on waivers because we know
they're not going to put Joseph Woll on waivers.
They're not going to put Joseph Woll on waivers, and Samsonov, he's secured that starting position. So 100% it's going to be Martin Jones. I think Tampa's going to pick him up with this Vasilevsky injury. I really don't see why they wouldn't, but we can get more into the Tampa situation and all that when we get into division breakdown. So I think we should head over there because this year, as we were saying earlier, it's going to be a really exciting year. You have a lot of teams who we expect to take a step up, teams we expect to sort of regress a little bit. So you good to go into division breakdowns or what, eh?
Yeah, absolutely. You want to start off with the Atlantic?
Yeah, I think we should start out east, make our way out west. I think that makes the most sense. So we'll start off with the Atlantic. This last year was probably the most stacked division. This year, as I said earlier, you have teams that are going to have some regression. Boston Bruins, for me, I think is a team that's going to regress a little bit. But then you also have some sleeper teams, Ottawa, Buffalo, even Detroit picking up the breakout. They made a big deal there. Who do you think is making the playoffs from this division?
So this is definitely like a really tough division to guess. I personally, I think every single team in this division besides Montreal is going into this season with the expectation that they want to make the playoffs. Ottawa, this rebuild's kind of gone a little bit longer than I think is planned. Detroit's been in a rebuild for quite some time. With the move Stevie Y made this summer, some of them were not great, but it seems like he's not willing to wait on these young guys to develop, and they're bringing in guys like JT Compher, Jeff Petrie. I don't think he has much patience anymore with these guys. And with Buffalo, man, I think Buffalo's got a really good chance of making the playoffs this year. They didn't make it by a couple points last year. They were in it right at the end. I think that they've are really good at every position, to be honest, in accordance to like their future. So even if they do miss this year, like I wouldn't be too worried as a Sabres fan. You got a new guy in Devon Levi coming in net. Obviously, like Power made a name for himself last year as a defenseman behind Dahlin. And then you got a pretty good forward core, man. Tage Thompson obviously has been breaking out the past couple of years. They got Cousins, who's a 30-goal scorer. They're pretty set, I think, for the future. I personally think that Buffalo is going to be making the jump from out of the playoffs to in the playoffs. This is a really hard division, like I said, because it's also, you're predicting wildcard teams too, right? And you have to factor in the Metro division in this prediction. I could see a situation where Buffalo gets in and Florida or like Boston is out, to be honest with you, and 4 teams in the Atlantic are making it and 4 teams in the Metro. I think the Leafs have a really good chance of winning this division. They've obviously been a really good regular season team over the past couple of years. They might have the best roster at this point in the Atlantic Division in accordance to regular season. Like you said, Boston's taken a step back this year. The thing is with the Bruins still, though, is like their defense didn't change much, and they still got a really good goalie tandem. So it's going to be like, how much is losing Bergeron? Is someone going to like take over that role of being like a really good two-way center? Obviously, they're never going to be at his caliber, but losing him is a huge loss. I think they're going to like be playing more of that defensive style game, and they're going to be trying to make the playoffs off winning like 2-1 games, 1-0, 3-2. You know what I mean? It is really interesting to think about, but I think I'm going with like 4 teams in the Metro, 4 teams in the Atlantic, and Buffalo's going to be in, and either like Florida or Tampa Bay is going to be out, to be honest.
See, I have 4-4 for the Eastern Conference. Leafs, without a doubt, I think they finish first in the Atlantic. When you look at the roster and what Treliving's done over the summer, like he's really addressed, outside of that defensive core, he's addressed all the biggest needs really in that Leafs lineup. Like you get those feisty guys in Ryan Reeves, Tyler Bertuzzi, Max Domi, and then also moving Nylander to the center. At first, I was really iffy on that move, but the more in preseason I've sort of seen those line combinations, the more I'm really starting to like that, because the biggest thing in the league is having that center depth. And now with Matthews, Tavares, and Nylander, 1, 2, 3 down the middle, you sort of have 3 lines there. You can just roll at any time, where in previous seasons you really depended on those top 2 lines. So I think the Leafs have done a great job, and they'll secure that first overall spot in the Atlantic. The Lightning, yes, they'll be without Vasilevsky for 10 weeks, but this team is still so good. Even last year, when you look at that Leafs series last year, when you look at the score box, yeah, the Leafs sort of got out of there a bit easy. But when you look at the actual games, a lot of those games went to OT. It easily could have gone in Tampa's favor. I think Tampa comes back and has a better year this year. They'll finish second. And then I got Florida third overall. I really like this Florida team. Last year, their biggest issue was their goaltending. You were starting Alex Lyon first game of the playoffs. Bobrovsky played phenomenal for the rest of the playoffs. And now we know, too, that Spencer Knight, he's going to be back with Florida this season. So I think they'll have a really big bounce back year in the crease, and they'll get that third spot. And then as a wild card team, I had the Sabres and Senators sort of written down as the 2 teams in the Atlantic that I think could be one of those wild card teams, but the Sabres have the edge there. I think they have a better forward group. They have a better defensive group. The only thing that we know for sure isn't in their favor compared to the Senators is the goaltending. But then again, that's one of those things with Levi as going into his first full season in the NHL. Like he could really do a great job for Buffalo, and they could easily get that third wild card spot. But this Atlantic division, the top 3 really are all pretty good teams. Then you sort of have that second tier with Florida, Buffalo, Boston, Ottawa in there, and then the Canadians in Detroit. Personally, I don't like Detroit
I
that
can't
much.
see them competing for the last spot,
No,
to be honest. I think
no, not
Detroit
at
really
all.
wants to, and they think they possibly could, but I don't see them. I don't think there's a situation, especially in this division, I see them making the playoffs this year.
Yeah, this division's honestly pretty stacked again going into this season. The
It's
only
kind of
team,
hard to predict, man, because you've been saying about
yeah,
Florida, like you like them a lot. Like they don't have Montour and Ekblad for 2 months, so like if they're able to hold down the fort without him, I could see them totally making it. But I feel like I was just more iffy on them not making it because Bob was great in the playoffs last year, but the last couple of regular seasons, he's been like kind of average to below average, I guess you could say. And then just obviously those two anchors on defense, right? It's just like I don't know how long they can hold the fort down without him. But still, last year Boston was without a couple guys at the beginning of the season, right? And they did great. So Florida could definitely come out great, and it's also how they're going to respond after losing in the Cup Finals too, right?
yeah, and how much that Matthew Tkachuk injury could be lingering for the first little bit too, because that was a pretty gruesome injury there. But yeah, in this division, I think there's really only one team that you can mark off as for certain will not be competing for a playoff spot, and that's Montreal. But you're the Montreal insider on this podcast. What are your expectations sort of in the season for them?
So what I'm hoping from this team is like they've gone pretty young over the past couple of years, especially with like Ken Hughes
Yeah.
coming in. I really just want to see like the youth grow, man. Honestly, Caulfield was a super exciting player before he got injured last year. 26 goals in 46 games. Could he be a 40-goal scorer this year? Nick Suzuki, I feel like this is not in accordance like a make or break season for him, but he's been kind of underwhelming, to be honest. I think the last year or so, I thought ever since he made the Cup Finals, honestly, that Cup Final run, he was great, and I thought, oh my God, we've got our 1C, but he's been kind of in that range. I feel like it was a good 2C. Not sure if he can make that jump to 1C. Kirby Dach was great coming over last year. He didn't really do too good in Chicago. They picked up Alex Newhook this year, kind of interested to see what he can do. He didn't really get a huge role with the Avalanche, to be quite honest. Kind of hoping he can play at least in the top six, get some opportunity there. But with this team, man, I don't really know what to expect besides like I don't think they're coming in any other place besides last in that division. I kind of have a feeling that they're going to be in a lot of high scoring games this year and their goaltending is going to really let them down, to be quite honest with you. And I think it's going to be a little bit more like suffering for like myself and other Canadians fans before we do see some success. I am definitely like optimistic about the future of this team. There's some other good prospects like that are not even in the signed right now, like Lane Hudson. Pretty
I love
excited
that
about when
Hudson kid.
he might sign at the end of the year, come in. You know what I mean? I don't see a situation where they're even competing for a playoff spot in this division, to be honest with you. But I'm hoping, to be honest, just to see some growth from a lot of the young guys. At worst, like try to even like move out a couple of these vets still that are kind of taking spots from these young guys that are going to be going like up and down from Laval. But they're going young, right? And they're going in the right direction. A rebuild was needed, in my opinion. And you kind of got to suffer before you can be good sometimes because being like that mid-pack kind of team does not really help you in the long run.
Yeah, I always think the worst place in sports if you're a franchise is being that mid-pack team because you're not competing for anything and you're not getting those good draft picks where it's like franchise altering. But I completely agree with you with Montreal. I think the biggest thing for them is just seeing the growth in these young players because we all know how rowdy you Montreal Canadiens fans can be. And if you guys at the end of the year have watched this team and a lot of these young players haven't shown any growth or haven't taken a step up in their progress in the NHL, I think at that point we could possibly see some Canadiens fans getting pretty upset, especially with Slavkovsky because that guy was he was a first overall pick. So with first overall picks, especially when you look at some of the guys that have gone first overall in the last couple of years, you expect them to come in and day one sort of really make a name for themselves in the league, and he hasn't really done that yet. But I think he'll be able to have a pretty good season here. And now that
He's
this
gonna get
team
opportunity, man. He's gonna get the
yeah,
opportunity. And honestly, I think you start him off the NHL, and if he's not really proven it, I don't really think there's an issue with sending him down for a bit, like to get his confidence up, because even like sending him down for like 20, 25 games could like really help him out. You know what I mean? It's a long season. Like I wouldn't really have an issue with it, to be quite honest with you. I feel like he should have started in the A last year before he got injured. But yeah, he really needs to show some progress this season. Honestly, there's some things that are really questionable about him, but there's also some like really good parts to his game that I've noticed, especially in the preseason. So just kind of hoping that he can grow off that. He's obviously still really young. Can't really write him off yet, but I mean, in accordance to a first overall pick, yeah, he's definitely has to make a jump this season.
Yeah, so the Atlantic Division, it's going to be stacked this season. Whoever comes out, it's going to be a dogfight till game 82 to see who comes out of that division, especially for those two wildcard spots. It's going to be a great time watching that division this season. Now, let's go over to the least amusing division in the Western, or pardon me, in the Eastern Conference, the Metro Division. This one you have some pretty good teams here, and then I find here there's a lot of the middle pack teams, as we were talking about earlier. For me, I have Carolina finishing 1, Devils finishing 2, Rangers 3, and then the rest of those teams in that division, even the Blue Jackets, I think are all really middle of the pack teams. Who do you think is going to be in the playoffs from this division?
So in accordance to at least the top of the division, I don't really see much of a change from last year, kind of like you just said. Got the exact same order actually with Carolina, New Jersey, and the New York Rangers. To be honest with you, I do agree. I don't think Columbus is going to be nearly as bad as they were. Like they brought in Severson, they brought in Provorov. Werenski barely played last year. He was injured. Their defense is going to be a heck of a lot better. You're bringing in Fantilli. You're getting a full season out of Kirill Marchenko. I think this is a team that, like, as a Blue Jackets fan, like, you'd be excited to watch. And I like, if they're making a push for the playoffs, it's like great. But if you're also finishing near the bottom, it's like they still need a little bit more time of suffering, I think, before they can be good. I could see them maybe jumping up to like 7th or 6th in that division, to be quite honest with you. I could see the Flyers probably finishing at the bottom, especially after getting rid of Provorov.
Yeah, without a doubt.
You know what I mean? Kevin Hayes, they're gone now too. They do have Couturier and Atkinson coming back, who they didn't have all last year, but I can't see those guys like giving them that much of a push to be that much better, to be honest. Washington, to me, I don't really know, man. I don't know what to think about them. They didn't change too much. Like, they're bringing in Pacioretty, Joel Edmondson. They pretty much have a really similar team. I kind of think they're going to be a little bit better, but I don't see them making the playoffs. And then we're more in the middle. It's like, to me, it's probably like a toss-up between the Islanders and Pens for that 4th spot, which I do think is going to be the last wildcard team. I think I got it reversed from last year. I think Pittsburgh is going to get that last wildcard spot, to be honest with you, and the Islanders are going to drop out this year. The Islanders just didn't really make much change to their team. They still don't score a lot of goals. Like, they're relying on Sorokin a lot. I think Erik Karlsson can make a huge difference in Pittsburgh, right? They're also bringing in like Ryan Graves, who's like a good defensive guy in the top 4 as well. Kyle Dubas has kind of changed the bottom 6 part of their lineup, which struggled a lot last year. But I think this team's success is going to rely a lot on Tristan Jarry. He's proved to be a really good goalie in this league at times, but he's also proved that he's not at times too. He's had some real inconsistencies. I think Sid is pissed, to be honest. He missed the playoffs for the first time in his career, and he's going to be an animal this year. And I can see Pittsburgh getting in that wild card spot.
Yeah, I think Pittsburgh's 100% going to be that last wild card spot. They will get better goaltending this year. I do believe that Tristan Jarry won't be as injured as he was last year. And now bringing in Karlsson, outside of Edmonton, Pittsburgh could possibly have the second best power play in the league this year. When you look at that first power play unit, being able to put Karlsson on the point there, I think that's going to change that power play so much, and that it's really just going to flourish with him on that unit.
And it's also like they lost Jason Zucker, but like he did a nice move bringing in Riley Smith. I think, man, he's a pretty underrated player. You could plug into your top 6, like at a good salary at $5 million too. I really like that move, getting him in too. He'll probably be like on the second power play. I'm excited to see what he can do. Obviously, he's coming off a cup, so I mean, he's pretty motivated and he knows what it takes to win. So I think he's a good guy for Pittsburgh to pick up for sure.
Yeah, he was for sure a good pickup. When you look at what Kyle Dubas has done so far for the Penguins this offseason, I think he's done a really great job, especially with the assets that he sort of had when he came into that role. Like, they really don't have any top prospects to make trades with. Yeah, you can figure out a way to go out, get Erik Karlsson, and gain cap space in the same trade.
2 bad contracts too.
Yeah,
like
that was as much as Leafs fans have hated what Kyle Dubas has done, and especially now that he's left the organization, I think he had a great first summer over in Pittsburgh. But yeah, this division, the top two are really stacked. Carolina and New Jersey. Either one could finish first, I think, and then the other will finish two. Then you have the Rangers. They're
Pretty similar team to last year, right? They didn't have a lot of cap room to work with. Like Kane and Tarasenko are gone, but you got Blake Wheeler in at a nice price. But you also didn't even have Kane and Tarasenko till like what, the last third of the year. So it's like, I don't know. Like I don't see them like dropping off. I don't think they're better than New Jersey or Carolina, but I just think they're going to come in third in the division, to be honest. I just think that's where they stand. They got like debatably the best goalie in the league in Shesterkin, right? Pretty good decor too. Fox, Keandre Miller, Trouba, Lindgren. It's a really good top four. I like the Rangers. I think they're definitely going to make the playoffs. I just don't know if they're going to really be better, if that makes sense. But they had 107 points last year. So if they're finishing in that range again, like it's still a successful season.
For me, the only way I see the Rangers better if these younger guys take a giant leap. Like you need Lafreniere and you need Capo Caco to take a giant leap. If those two guys do take a giant leap and really show that they are the players that we all thought they were going to be a few years ago when they got drafted, then I could see the Rangers making.
I think they'll be a lot more dangerous of a team if those guys are like, if Caco puts up 30 and Laff is scoring like 20 to 25, like 50 plus points, like I think they're a lot better of a team and even a bigger threat.
Yeah, in that scenario, I could for sure see them putting up a fight for that first place in the Metro. But I just, at the end of the day, I just really don't think Lafreniere and Capo Caco are going to take that big of a step where the Rangers will be able to fight for that first spot in the division. But
I don't know. I think Carolina's pretty deep, man. They got a really deep team. Like in their
really
decor now, like they got like Brady Shea playing on the third pair. Like Carolina, obviously they strive on being great defensively, right? It's what Rod Brendamore kind of addresses with their team. And I don't know. I don't see Carolina going anywhere, to be honest with you. I think they're still top of the division, maybe second if New Jersey takes that jump over them. But it's just hard for me to see the Rangers jumping either of those teams.
Yeah, this division will for sure be fun to watch. When we talk about the Atlantic, there's a lot of teams we think could take that big next step up. When we talk about the Metro, though, it's a lot of team. I think the Metro has probably the most uncertainty out of every division in the NHL right now. When you have, because even the Penguins, we do believe that the Penguins are going to be back to sort of where they were a season or two ago, but they could also not be. In this Carlson trade could really not work out. We talked about the
Capitals. Could get terrible goaltending and their depth could not turn out as planned. You know what I mean? Like it could go really south for them as well.
Yeah, you have a lot of middle of the pack teams in this division, and with those middle of the pack teams, you never know sort of what could happen with them. Either they could go either way. They could either take that big jump and really look a lot better than we thought, or they could look a lot worse than they thought, than we thought. And then when you look at the West Division, the Central, for me, the Central and the Metro are two fairly similar divisions. You sort of have those top couple teams who you think are going to do really well, and then you have all those sort of middle in the pack teams, and then of course you have the Chicago Blackhawks, who, outside of Connor Bedard, I don't know why you're going to be watching them this season, but who do you have in the playoffs for the Central?
Yeah, this is kind of, you're right, honestly. This is kind of like a similar style of like team makeups to the Metro. Like I see Colorado and Dallas not really going anywhere from the top, to be honest. I think they're only 1 point difference last year. I could totally see Dallas overtaking Colorado for that first spot. They bring in Matt Duchene this summer after a bio, getting him cheap at $3 million. Man, that's going to be a good pickup. Him playing,
yeah, that's a great
first, second, maybe even third line at times for depth. I really like that for Dallas, to be quite honest with you. Colorado, obviously, they're pissed after winning that cup and losing in the first round to Seattle. They made some moves, bringing in Colton, like Ryan Johansson, Tatar. I really like what they did with their depth this year. They obviously lost Comfer. They had to replace him at that 2C role. I think those two teams are staying near the top. I like the Drouin risk too, man.
So
$825K, you can't go wrong. What's the worst that can happen? Send him down to the minors. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's a great risk.
He's going to be
to
playing
take.
alongside McKinnon. So if you can get Drouin popping off on a line with McKinnon and Rantanen, man, that could be a great comeback.
Could be
He
really
could be
dangerous, man.
comeback player of the year.
Man, honestly, and I like the idea of him like with Rantanen because he's a real pass first player, right?
Yeah.
Rantanen's got a great shot. So I mean, I really like that line to try, at least at times. I don't know if they'll stay together like all year or anything. I guess it depends how they perform. But you know what, man? I kind of did feel bad for Duran the way he was treated in Montreal. I feel like he took a little bit too much slack. He obviously did not perform to the expectation. But I do really hope that he turns his career around, honestly. And it's great that he gets a chance with McKinnon. I'm sure he's really excited for a new home. You know what I mean? Try it out. Maybe he'll end up getting like a couple year contract next year if he puts up like 50 plus points or something like that. I really like Colorado though. They're another team though, like Tampa, who's probably looking for a goalie when Francouz's injured. I know Vladar is a guy who's available. I don't know if that's a guy they're going to be looking at. They don't have a lot of cap space to work with. Francouz has obviously been known to be injured quite a bit, but like Georgiev's their guy, right? So they're looking for probably like a more of like a 1B backup style, but I really like Colorado going to this season.
Yeah, Colorado looks good. For me, I have the Dallas Stars number one in that division. When we talk about that Matt Duchene going and picking him up, I think that's such a great pickup for him.
Yeah, like
When
he
you
wasn't
look
great last year, man, but he had 42 goals the year before. Like,
when you look at their top three centers, you're gonna be going with Rope Hintz, Tyler Seguin, Matt Duchene. And then this is
you also have like Pavelski who could play center. You
yeah,
got
you have
Wyatt
Pavelski
Johnson
who
who
can
could play
yeah.
center. Ben takes a lot of faceoffs all the time. They're set up pretty nice, I think.
Dude, they're a deep team. The other thing I really like about Dallas is I think they have that perfect mix of having your like young core and your older core both playing well at the same time. Because you have the older core in Dallas, who of course is Jamie Benn, Tyler Seguin, Matthew Shane now. But then you have those younger guys, Miro Heiskanen on the back end, probably the most underrated defenseman in the league. But then
I
you have
think he has
Jason,
honestly a chance to be like at least nominated for the Norris this
yeah,
year.
for sure. But then you also have Jason Robertson, you have Jake Ottinger in goal, and you have Rope Hintz. Like they have such a great mix of older players and younger players who are all really making a difference in that lineup.
And the thing is, I think they're set really nice for the future. Obviously, talk about those guys that are
Yeah.
young, but in a couple of years, man, they're going to be getting Sagan's and Ben's money off the books over $9 million. Like,
And you,
imagine what they can do with that
they're
capital.
gonna
You know what I
they're
mean?
gonna have,
In a couple of years.
well, they're gonna have that, and they're gonna have Logan Stankoven coming up at some point in the next few years too. And he's a really good young player.
Yeah, I think he probably is going to have a chance to make the team this year, to be honest. He'll probably play some games, I think. I like Dallas a lot, but after that, I think you're right. There is a huge drop off in accordance to like calibers of teams. I think Minnesota, I still think they're going to make the playoffs. I don't really know what to think of them though. They get carried a lot, obviously, by Kaprizov and like really good defensive style play. For them, I think it's going to like matter. Like Gustafsson, man, came out of nowhere in net last year, right? He was awesome. Is he going to be able to do that or like somewhere close to that again? You know, goaltending in this league, man, after your top 5 or 6 guys, it's kind of like a coin flip if you know guys are going to be good or not. You know what I mean? I think that's going to be dependent on their success this year. Winnipeg, I don't know how much I like them in this whole Scheifele Hellebuck situation with are they staying? Are they going? Winnipeg seems like they want to keep them for now and risk it. I don't get it at all. They could be losing both of them for nothing, and then you're screwed for years, to be quite honest. And Winnipeg's just that team that we were talking about. It's like mid-pack. They've got a couple good prospects, but they've never been bad enough to pick that high. I don't really see St. Louis being much different. They were bad last year, and Tarasenko O'Reilly left. They did nothing this summer. They brought in Kevin Hayes. Like I don't even know what other moves they made really. They brought back Oscar Sundqvist. I don't see St. Louis being much different from last season, to be honest. I am kind of excited to see Arizona play, to be honest with you. I think they're like more of an underrated team in this league. You got like Logan Cooley coming in now, who looks pretty nice. He's going to be probably playing in that top 6 role. Pick up Jason Zucker. Pick up Matt Dumba. Nick Bukestad's coming back. I don't see this team making the playoffs, but I think they're going to be an exciting team to watch this year, to be quite honest with you. And then Chicago's obviously going to be exciting with Bedard. Can't really see them doing much damage, though. Like you said, people are probably only be watching to watch Bedard play, but I'm definitely excited to see how he does in his first season.
Yeah, Chicago without a doubt is going to be the worst team in this division. As you mentioned, Arizona, I also agree there. I think they will take a pretty big step here. Not competing for a playoff spot, but they won't be picking top five like they have been for
No, I don't
the
think
last
so
5 years or so. Clayton Keller, he had a great last season. Barrett Hayton too. That's a guy that took a really big jump last season.
I
And then
like Nick
also,
Schmaltz a lot too, man. He doesn't really get talked about a lot, but he's a good little player.
yeah, he's a good player. And then for me, I also really like that Sean Dursey pickup that they went out and got, because Sean Dursey, he was always great in LA, but he didn't have that role as being like the number one offensive defenseman. Where now in Arizona, he will be able to be that offensive defenseman on the back end for them. So I think he'll really flourish there.
It is a really
I,
nice pickup for them, to be honest. And he kind of lost losing his spot in LA, right? They got Doughty on the right side. Brant
yeah,
Clark's coming up. They got Jordan Spence as well. It's like, where's he going to play on the third pair? Like, it doesn't,
yeah,
he's not going to excel
didn't
on
make
that
sense for him
third
there.
pair. He's
But
not
you
going to
have
excel.
I have the Minnesota Wild finishing third in this division, but realistically, I think you could either have the Jets, Wild, possibly the Blues finishing third there, and then I don't see any wild card spots going to anybody in the Central
So
Division.
I was going to say the same thing, to be honest. I think there's only 3 teams making it from this division.
Yeah,
The one team I did pass over when I was talking about was Nashville. They've obviously kind of went with a different direction since like Tross has been the GM, getting rid of like Jeannot, Ekholm. They still got a great goalie in Saros. They're kind of like, they have a lot of youth, man. Like last year, Tommy Novak's pretty good for them. Parsonen, Luke Evangelista got a shot. He was pretty good last year. I'm
he was
sure like
great last season.
Tomasino's going to play Cody Glass. Like they're a team where I think they probably want to make the playoffs. I don't know if they're going to be good enough to make the playoffs, but they really want their young guys to take a step. Because Cody Glass, man, like he was a top 10 pick. He never really panned out, but I thought he took a huge step last year. So I'm kind of curious to see what he can do. They're bringing in Ryan O'Reilly, Luke Shen. They still got, you know what I mean, some vets in Yossi Forsberg. I don't think they're going to be terrible by any means. I kind of think they're just going to miss the playoffs just like last year. But I think their season success depends on how good their youth does.
I completely agree there. I also think their success depends on what way management decides to go. Because man, when you look at Barry Trotz, this is going to be his first season as the official GM there. So when you look at what he decides to do, I think he does want the team to go for the playoffs, but you could also trade away some of those bigger names. You see Saros, he's on a great deal. He still has time left on his contract. And you have Askarov in the system who's going to be ready to come up in the next year or two, I think. So if you have teams around trade deadline or around Christmas time really looking to go pick up that goaltender, especially with
nice
the way
package.
especially with the way the cap is now, where you have Saros on an amazing deal for how he performs, you could get a great package there. And then same thing with Forsberg. Forsberg's on a pretty good deal right now. If a team wants to go pick him up and you can get a good package for it, why not? The only player
Even the guy I wonder about with them, man, is the money's a bit high, but if you retain half, like, do you not think some competing team would be interested in McDonough for $3.5 million? Like, he's shown how good of a defenseman he was on those cup runs. Like,
yeah,
I know that 6.7 is a lot of money for him, but like, if you're willing to retain half, I don't think that's crazy to think that a competing team could pick him up.
Yeah, I could for sure see that. He really did prove with Tampa how good he was. So the only thing is, if you're Nashville, would you want to retain that?
Right.
Because you have those you're already retaining on Ryan Johansson's contract, right?
Yeah.
And then you also have the buyout now with Duchesne. So I don't know how much money they'd want to spend on players that like
How much dead money they want.
yeah,
Yeah.
how much dead money they want. But
It's just like theoretically, like just something I just thought of, you know what I mean? Just considering he's been on a competing team for so long. And maybe it'd be to the point where he doesn't want to be there anymore. You know what I mean? If they're not
Yeah,
really going in the right direction, I guess.
yeah, because
Um,
he's getting up there in age now. So for a
yeah.
player that's won that much, would you really want to? It is Nashville, though. It is a great city, so that could be an exception. But who knows? Who knows with the Predators what they're going to be like this season? I think they probably have the biggest question mark this season, whether they're going to be a team that's going to go for it and try to make the playoffs, or if they're going to go that rebuilding direction. But then when you look at the Pacific Division, personally, I think this is the most stacked division in all of the NHL this season, especially when you look at the moves that went on over the summer. You have Pierre-Luc Dubois, he goes to the Kings. Vegas, of course, they just won the Stanley Cup. They're looking good again. And then you have the best two players in hockey playing on the Oilers. This division absolutely stacked. Who do you think's making the playoffs in this division?
So like we were talking about the other division, I think I could see 5 teams getting in from this division. I wouldn't be surprised at all if the 4 teams that made it last year make it again and we see Calgary jump back in. Obviously, you're the Flames fan here. They had a very disappointing season last year. What did they lose? 31 goal games or something like that. They had
Yeah, it
like
was
almost
outrageous. It
20
was
OT
outrageous.
losses. You had pretty below average goaltending, which is unexpected from Markstrom. I like the Flames a lot. I honestly could see them even like jumping into the top 3 in this division. It is really tough though with like LA and Edmonton and Vegas. So maybe Calgary's sitting in that wild card spot. I would be really shocked if they don't get back in, to be honest. They were like a huge like underachieve from last year. Not really much moves this offseason though, right? Like it's just kind of like Toffoli out, Sharon Govich in. You got Jordan Esterly on D. Like Shillington's not coming back. They're a pretty similar team, really good defensively. You know what I mean? I could see them getting in. Honestly, people are kind of like cutting up Seattle, like that it was like a fluke. I don't know, man. I think like they're not the most talented team, but they work hard. Like I could totally see them getting back in the playoffs again. You get another year of Beniers' development. I think their goaltending is going to be a huge dependency on their success, though, with Grubauer. He was pretty good in the playoffs last year, but he hasn't really been that good since he's been over in Seattle. But I don't really see the top 3 changing, I guess. I could probably see a situation where like Edmonton wins the division, to be quite honest.
I
I
have
think
Edmonton
McDavid and
winning the
Draisaitl are
division.
pissed. And honestly, I really like them bringing in Connor Brown. Like, even if he's not playing with McDavid all the time, like, he's going to be a nice piece there in your top 6. They've obviously still got a really good team. It's kind of hard for, like, Jack Campbell to be worse than he was last year, too. I think their goaltending's in a pretty good spot as well. I see Edmonton winning this division, probably Vegas second, LA third. And I'd probably say Calgary in that first wild card spot and Seattle in the second.
Yeah, so for me, I have the Oilers finishing first. You look at that team, you have the best two players in the world. As you said, Jack Campbell, like the guy got sent down last year. He cannot play any worse than he did last season. And then on the back end, their back end is going to be looking better this season. You're going to have a full year of Ekholm. Ekholm was so good for them once he got traded from the Predators. Having a full season of him on the back end is going to be amazing. Darnell Nurse, he's back to being healthy, so he should be a bit better than he was last season. But then for me, the defenseman I really, really like on the Oilers is Evan Bouchard. Of course, he's still a younger player, so he has that potential to take that next step. But now with Tyson Barrie gone, Evan Bouchard's going to be that offensive defenseman for the Oilers. He's going to be that defenseman on the number 1 power play unit, the best power play unit in hockey with McDavid and Draisaitl on it. I think he's going to absolutely rack up power play points this season. For LA, I have LA finishing second. The moves they made over the offseason were phenomenal. You're going to have Brant Clark coming in. Their center depth is the best center depth in the league. You have Kopitar, PLD, and then Philip Deneau. I don't know how it
I'm
can
guessing
possibly get
Byfield's
better
playing
than
the
that.
wing. Like,
Yeah, he'll have to be playing the wing.
there's
You
no way
can't
he's
be
playing
playing that guy
4C.
fourth. Yeah, can't be playing that guy fourth line center minutes when he was a second overall pick a few years ago. The only question mark with LA is their goaltending. That's
Big
that's
question
the
mark.
biggest question mark is what's that going to look like? And then
They
yeah,
did get into the playoffs last year with like brutal goaltending until Corpusalo came over. So that's why I'm not like that worried about them making the playoffs, to be honest with it. But it could be a situation where they like make another move at the deadline for a goalie. If it's like with like a Talbot, Copley, Riddick, I don't really trust that going into the playoffs, to be quite honest. But
Yeah,
we'll see.
I don't trust that at all going into the playoffs. And then for me, I have the Knights finishing third. We all know what they did last season. You do have some players that are getting a bit older. So it could be a question mark there. And again, the goaltending there is a question mark. We all know Robin Leonard's, he's not playing. In Hill.
They got a good tandem, I think, in Hill Thompson. Like none of them are. Hill obviously kind of like came out of nowhere in the playoffs, but he's never been like a starting goal in the NHL, right? Like for a full season or anything. But I honestly, I like their tandem playing behind Vegas's D. Vegas has got a really good D core. I can't really see their goaltending being a problem this year.
Yeah, I don't think their goaltending's bad, but the Aiden Hill situation does worry me a bit just because he really hasn't proven himself. Like Jack Campbell had a phenomenal year for the Leafs. And then we look at what Jack Campbell did last year and it was not stellar. Like Aiden Hill, it could be a coin flip there, as you mentioned earlier in the episode. But then when it comes down to wild card, I have the Kraken finishing in that first wild card position. The only reason really I think people still hate on the Kraken is just because they're such a new team. The same thing happened with Vegas when they went to the Cup. Oh, it was a fluke of a season. Well, they just won the Cup last season, so I don't think we can call these expansion teams having success very early on in their franchise history. I don't think we can call that a fluke anymore. And then I have the Flames finishing in that second wild card position. For me, the Flames, there's a bit of a question mark there overall is how much could this core change? Lindholm, he's on that expiring deal. We all know they haven't really done much there talking about a contract. And then Hannafin's been wanting to be traded to an American team, it feels like, for the last 2 seasons now, and nothing's really happened. But with him on an expiring deal as well, you're going to have to figure out something there on where he's going to go. So
it's the way it went with the whole Goudreau thing. Like you can't really be risking losing these guys, man. Again, you got to at least be getting something back. And I think like for them, like the most important guy like getting locked up, I think would probably be Lindholm, just because like it's so hard to replace that 1C, right? Like as much as I like Hannafin, like I feel like there's players around the league that could replace him. But I don't really think it's easy to find like a Lindholm replacement, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's for sure going to be a lot easier to replace Noah Hannafin than Elias Lindholm, especially when you already look at that defensive core in Calgary and sort of how deep they are there. But then for me, the thing that really makes no sense right now with the Flames, and I know you agree on this because we've talked about it not on this podcast, is their goaltending situation. Why the hell is Dustin Wolf not getting a chance in the NHL, especially when you look at their goaltending situation last year, which was atrocious? Like, are the Flames just really overvaluing Dan Vladar like that much? Because that's the only way I
man. I think it's because of his youth, and he's shown at times he can be really good. But even if you look at his numbers, man, like they're not that great, and he's kind of been more in that like backup role. I would bet on Markstrom rebounding, to be honest. I don't think he's going to be nearly as bad as he was last year.
He's not going to have Daryl absolute psychological warfare the whole season, so that should help out a bit in him bouncing back.
And the thing is, it's like with Dustin Wolf, man, this guy's back-to-back AHL goalie of the year. And then he was the 2 years before that, he was WHL goalie of the year. He's been the best goalie in the league he's played in the past 4 seasons. I don't get it, to be honest with you. I think Vladar can bring in some value in a trade, like maybe like a 3rd, 2nd round pick or like some sort of prospect, but I don't really understand keeping him in the minors. It's like, what else does this kid have to prove, to be honest? At worst, he's just going to like be getting used to like AHL style of hockey, and it might not even translate well to the NHL eventually. I think they should definitely look to move Vladar. I've been on the train of Vladar to Colorado ever since Francouz has been hurt. I think they got to make a move because it's like, how happy can you be if you're Dustin Wolf after a while? It's like, okay, you do it one season. Okay. It's like, can you do it again? Yeah, I can. And now it's like, I got to do it again. Like I'm 22, 23. Like I've been proven I'm the best goalie in every league I've played in. Like he deserves a shot in the NHL. Like not just random games. Like he should be playing like 25, 30 games, I think, at
Yeah.
least.
The other thing
And
with
like you
that
said,
is,
their situation with goaltending was bad last year. They're not coming off a season where Vladar and Markstrom were a great tandem and like top 5 in the league. It's like they were like a bottom 5 to 10 tandem in the league last year. Like I just don't understand it.
the other thing with it that I sort of worry about a bit is you don't want it to hurt the player's growth either, where it can either get to the point where the player says like, man, just get me to another team, because if you guys clearly don't value me the way I think I should be valued, I want to play somewhere else. Or if it gets to the point where it actually hurts his growth and how he performs, because he just
And it and
he
it
doesn't
sucks
get the
because
call
it
up, and
really
then it
just
becomes a
like
mental thing.
the whole thing is literally just because like Vladar can't clear waivers and like Wolf can
Yeah.
be sent straight down, right? Like I feel like that's the only difference in why he's in the AHL, to be honest with you. But I'd be a little bit frustrated if I were him, but seems like honestly, man, he's a great goalie. I don't think he's gonna let it go to his head too much. He's just got to keep playing really well and like force their hand to get called up.
Yeah, so we've talked about the top teams in this division. It's pretty stacked. But then you sort of have, I think you have one middle team in this division being the Vancouver Canucks. And then you have the Ducks and Sharks, who are going to be getting top 5 picks next season. The Canucks, I
I don't know if I expect
be,
anything different from them. Like
yeah, they're
I
going to
don't
be
know what to
such a
expect.
similar team.
Like
They,
I don't know if they're like competing for a spot. Like I wouldn't be surprised. Like they're really good. Like goalie and Demko, he's gonna rebound. Like Hughes is great. Patterson's great. I don't know about them, man. I just don't really think they're good enough team to make the playoffs still.
I think Vancouver right now is the absolute definition of middle of the pack team. They
Yeah.
could they could sneak in and be an easy first round exit, or they could be picking in that like 10 to 15 range for the Vancouver. But then when you look at the Ducks, of course, they're going to be near the bottom again. I think they're in a similar position sort of to Montreal, where you have a couple of those big young players in your core that you want to take steps up, but you still want to be bad enough to get that bad picking up near the top there for Macklin Celebrini or Cole Eiserman. And then for the Sharks, the Sharks the Sharks could easily be the worst team in the NHL this year and have that first overall pick.
I definitely think they have the worst roster in the NHL heading into this
Oh,
season. I don't know if they'll end up finishing last. I could probably see them, and like Philly's probably going to be down there, to be
Philly's pretty bad.
honest,
Yeah.
too. Anaheim, yeah, they're probably going to be around that top 5 area of picks. You know what I mean? San Jose, yeah, I think you just got to focus on getting the best pick you can, to be honest. Like, man, they were that bad last year with Erik Karlsson. Like, I don't know what to expect without him now. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just going to be pretty tough for them, I think.
Yeah, and with San Jose, they have, when you look at their prospect pool, they have a lot of good prospects, but they don't really have that many of like the guy like the franchise altering player. They don't
No, they don't. And I think
they
I
don't
do
have
think
one, to be
they're going in the
honest.
right direction, though. Like they understand that they're
Yeah.
trying to get their picks, prospects. They got a couple prospects, but I think they still need like another top 5 pick. Like it's Will Smith's a nice pickup for them for a couple years, but they need another guy coming in too that's gonna like make a huge difference for them in the future. Like this is gonna be a D heavy draft in 2024, maybe. They obviously got Pittsburgh's pick, who's top 10 protected too. Maybe they're taking like a guy like Eiserman or Celebrini or like Demidov in the top 5, and then focusing on like a defenseman later on. That could really help them in their prospect system.
Well, we'll take a break here to give you our favorite betting picks for week 1 of the NHL season. Afterwards, we'll break down who we have taken home all the awards at the end of the NHL season. With the NHL season starting up on October 10th, of course, here at the Point to Point Sports Network, we have to have some money on the line. Our first bet, it's the Dallas Stars to win the Stanley Cup. You can currently get that at plus 1,700 right now. That means $10 will return to you $180. When you look at their team, they have a great goaltender in Jake Ottinger. I expect him to take another leap forward this season. They have a very good forward depth, especially at center. Their defensive group, yes, they could be a little bit better, but they have Maro Heiskanen taking the charge back there. He's probably the most underrated defenseman in all of the NHL right now. Our second bet, this one's going to be a parlay with all the opening night games. First off, we have the Penguins money line versus the Chicago Blackhawks. When you look at Chicago, they're a team that's not going to be competing that much this season. For Pittsburgh, they missed the playoffs last year. Sid's upset about that. They had some changeover in the front office. I expect them to get off to a hot start. The second game in this parlay is Tampa Bay versus Nashville, and here we're taking the Tampa Bay money line. Yes, they are without Vasilevsky for the first 10 weeks of the season, but when you look at that team and at their roster construction, they're still a franchise that can really compete for a Stanley Cup. And on the other side, Nashville, they lost some of their top players this season. I like the players they brought in, but I do expect this to be a team that regresses. The third game in the parlay is the Seattle Kraken versus the Las Vegas Golden Knights. For the Knights, it's going to be an emotional night. They're raising that Stanley Cup banner. It's going to be a lengthy ceremony, and for that reason, I have the Seattle Kraken puck line, which currently sits at 1.5. The odds on this parlay is plus 259. That means $10 would return to you $35.91. Stay tuned for more bets for the NHL season. Hopefully you'll be able to cash out from our picks. Like, we think all these players at the end of the season are going to absolutely cash out at the NHL awards. First up, we have the Calder. Mark, is this going to be unanimous here?
I think so, to be honest. I do think like some other guys deserve respect, but I can't really see a situation where Bedard isn't winning this, to be honest. He's just looked so good at rookie camp, first couple preseason games, man. I wouldn't be shocked this guy's scoring 40 goals, to be quite honest with you. Maybe putting up somewhere near a point per game, maybe like around 70. Who knows? He's obviously going to be playing first line minutes. Other guys that I think that could be in that conversation, at least for like nomination, like Logan Cooley, Fantilli, probably Luke Hughes as well. But I don't really see a situation where Bedard isn't winning it.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think Bedard, Logan Cooley, and Luke Hughes are the sort of the big three names there. Connor Bedard, he's going to be somewhere between the 70 to 85 points totals, I think. And for Chicago, going out and getting Taylor Hall, that's going to be big for Bedard's development, being able to actually have a winger there in his first year that he can really rely on. And
also a guy that was picked first overall too, right? Like, he kind of knows the pressure and like what it's. I really like that pickup for them.
Well, Taylor Hall's been picked first overall, and he's played with a bunch of first overall picks because he's played with Nico Hischier. He's played with Jack Hughes, I believe. He's played with Connor McDavid as well. And now he's going to be playing with Connor Bedard. So it's 4 first overall picks he's played with, plus himself being one.
Even Yakupov.
Yeah, Yakupov as well.
He's played with a lot, man.
That guy's Mr. First overall.
Yeah, hopefully they're not sitting at the same spot next year, but I can't see that. I honestly think Bedard's good enough that he could like carry them out of at least last place.
Yeah, when you look at Chicago's lineup compared to Phillies and San Jose's, I think Chicago is a bit better than those two teams for sure.
Yeah.
Next up, we have the Selke winner. I have Nico Hischier. When you look at last season, he was phenomenal. Jack Hughes absolutely broke out last season. So Nico Hischier's really going to be able to focus this year on his defensive craft. And the biggest thing with the Selke, honestly, is the fact that Patrice Bergeron retired. When you look at the votes last season,
it wasn't even close, man.
97.65% of the votes. He got 187 first votes. Second, you got 4 seconds, 2 thirds, 2 fourths. That's insane.
It's time to rename the award.
Yeah. So Nico Hischier is going to win the Patrice Bergeron award this year, I believe. He's He's phenomenal defensively.
It's definitely a
He
great
finished
pick, man,
second.
especially being nominated last year.
He finished second last season, and honestly, he's a fellow Swiss, so I got to go with that. Who do you have taken home the award though?
So I actually have him in the nomination, the top three, but I'm gonna go with Barkov. He's
Yeah,
obviously been a really great two-way center throughout his entire career. I could see him, especially if he's staying healthy, him taking home this award. Playing with Matthew Tkachuk, obviously Tkachuk kind of like has been carrying that offense a little bit more than Barkov has, and Barkov can kind of more focus on his defensive game, which he's played really well even the last couple of seasons still. But I could see him just flourishing from playing with Tkachuk, continuing that great defensive play, and him taking home the Selke this year.
it feels like for the older generation, Bergeron and Kopitar had won it for like the past 10 years. I can see Nico Hischier and Barkov doing that for the next 10 years. So I think those are both great two picks. Jack Adams, that's the next award we have on the list. I went with Peter DeBoer. Honestly, I think Dallas is an absolute wagon of a team this year. I think they're going to be you're going to have some of their players taking home a fair bit of awards. So that's who I went with. Jack Adams, it's always a tough one to predict though, because
Especially if they win the division too, he probably will have a good chance.
but then again, the thing with the Jack Adams is like you could have one of those teams who like you could have Arizona come out, make the playoffs, and you know what I mean? And like
And their coach gets a huge recognition, yeah.
yeah, and that's the only and that's the no doubt pick. The Jack Adams, it was a hard one, but I had to go with the
Definitely
team I
not
thought
an
was going to do
easy
the
award to
best.
predict. I might be going a little off the board with this one because I think this team's just going to break out this year. I have Don Granato winning out the Buffalo Sabres. I personally think Buffalo's jumping into a top three spot. I think them not making the playoffs in 12 years, they got a bunch of young guys on their team. If this team is able to excel and like reach somewhat of their potential this year and make the playoffs, I think he could be like a huge consideration for this award. A lot of players have liked playing for him ever since he came in a couple of years ago. He's proven to be a pretty good coach. So honestly, it's a little bit off the board, but I'm going with Don Granato in Buffalo.
Yeah, that's another good pick. Next up, we have the Vesna. I'm going back to Dallas and going Jake Ottinger here. The he's only 24 years old. He was a first round pick. When you look at his numbers last year, he had a 237 goals against average. He had a 919 save percentage. He had 5 shutouts. The other thing I really like about Jake Ottinger is he plays a lot of games. He played 62 games last season. He started 61. For me, when I'm picking a Vesna guy, I want that guy that's really playing a lot of games and putting up the numbers. That's why I'm going Jake Ottinger. I think he's going to have a huge season.
That's a really good pick considering how much we've been praising Dallas and how good they're going to be. I could see him putting up pretty similar numbers to what he did last year. The guy I got this year is the guy who won it 2 years ago. I'm going back to Igor Shesterkin, actually. He's coming off, obviously, I don't even want to say a down year. Like, it's just more like he wasn't as good as that he was that the year before and with a 935. He's coming off a 916 save percentage. He had a 937 save percentage in 7 games in the playoffs last year, losing it in the first round. Just keeping New York in every single game. Obviously, they fell short to New Jersey. I really like him. I think he's at worst like a top 3 goalie in the league. I see the Rangers, like we said, still having some success. Vasilevsky's obviously out for 2 months to the year this year. That's kind of like an opening for like a new Vezina winner, I guess, just considering he's probably not going to be playing enough time to even be considered, even if he is really good when he comes back. I'm going with Igor in the New York Rangers. I really like him. I could see him having a good season again where he's putting up a 925 save percentage at least.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good pick. There's a fair bit of goalies right in today's NHL right now that could honestly win the Vezina. Of course, you said Vasilevsky's injured, so
The
he
other thing
won't be
with other
with it.
goalies, it's just more dependency. Like I love Saros, love Hellebuck, but I just
Yeah,
wonder, like, I don't have either of those teams in the playoffs, right? Even Sorokin. So it's like, I just don't know if their numbers go down a little bit because of that. You know what I mean? And even if they do have great seasons, it might not show it statistically. So that's kind of why I went with like more of like a safer bet in Shesterkin here. But like, I feel like any of those guys could end up winning the Vezina.
next up we have the Norris. Mark, I think we might be on the same page here. Not 100% sure on that, but who do you have winning the Norris?
So this was kind of a tough one, man. I think I have a huge feeling that Makar is going to just go nuts this year. I feel like he's probably scoring 20 plus goals, point per game player. Like I said, Colorado's pissed. I could just see them coming out absolutely hot. Honestly, though, it wasn't an easy decision. I really like Dahlin as well, and I really like Heiskanen. I could see those guys end up being the three nominees. Obviously, I didn't even include Erik Karlsson in there when he's coming off 100 points. He could easily be back there too. But I'm going with Cale Makar, man. I think he's the best defenseman in the league. Karlsson obviously got the best of him last year with the point production. Makar was injured a little bit too. But I could totally see Makar winning his second, Norris.
Yeah, so we for sure have the same top three with Makar, Dahlin, and Heiskanen. We just have different orders. I went with Dahlin. We both are sort of hopping on the Buffalo bandwagon so far this podcast, and Dahlin, he's going to be a huge part of the success they're going to have this season. Last year he played pretty much 26 minutes a game. He had 73 points, 15 goals, 58 assists. He's their number one defenseman. Owen Powers could take a pretty big jump here, which would help sort of take that focus off Dahlin on the back end. So I think he's taking it. I think he's taking home the Norris this year, and he's going to have an absolute monster of a season.
I think it's a nice bet too, because man, they brought in some depth D, man, right? Like Eric Johnson, Connor Clifton. Those guys are going to be taking the load off, at least like on the defensive side of the game. So Dahlin's going to be able to break out. Dahlin also improved his defensive game a ton last year too. And he got a lot more physical. I really like the direction Dahlin is headed in. I could easily see him winning a Norris Trophy.
He's a great player, and I think those three defensemen we mentioned are going to be the guys for the next 10 years that are always in contention for the Norris. It's going to be just who's going to have.
I think you got to throw Adam Fox in there a little bit too, probably. But that group of guys, to be honest, they're all around the same age too, right? I could see them all end up getting a Norris at some point.
Next up, this is the big one that all the forwards, I guess, really want to take home. It's the Rocket Richard. I got Connor McDavid again.
I got Connor McDavid scoring 65 goals this year, and I'm not kidding. 65? He had 64 last year. It's not unrealistic. I think just like Colorado, Edmonton, these guys are pissed, man. They want to win. Like, he's sick and tired of this being great in the regular season. Not that he hasn't been great in the playoffs, but they've only shown that success to get to the conference finals one time. And I don't think they're happy about it. I think that they're just going to plow their way through the season. I can see McDavid tearing it up, probably even having more points than last year, too.
Yeah, McDavid, when you look at McDavid and Draisaitl, they've already been skating together for almost a month now. They've never done this.
I'm pretty sure they wanted this. I'm pretty sure they told their whole team to be in Edmonton by September 1st.
Yeah, they did. These guys want to win. McDavid, without it, I don't know what his over under is right now on the betting sites, but if the over under is anything less than 64, I'm taking the over on that. I think he hits 65. I think he puts up 155 this year.
Could totally see him.
65 and 155. It just sounds and looks a lot nicer than 64 and 153. And then next up is the Hart. Again, we're going to be the same here.
It's just no competition, especially if we're saying McDavid scoring 65. Like, there's no way he's not winning that trophy.
The only way I see McDavid not winning the Rocket, not winning the Hart, is if he's injured for like a third of the season. Because even McDavid injured for like 15 games, the production that guy puts up, he could still win the Rocket and win the Hart missing 15 games.
It's definitely possible. Considering Pasta finished with 60 last year, right? Matthews had 60 the year before. Man, I could still see McDavid winning the Rocket and the Hart, even if he misses 10 to 15 games.
Yeah. So that's all the big awards, but you know what? It's just individual awards, and at the end of the day, the players, they don't care that much about that. The one they all want is that nice Stanley Cup ring. Mark, to end off the podcast, what team is getting their name on the cup this season?
This is a tough choice, man. Like we've talked about, there's a lot of good teams this year, teams that are trying to make this push. I honestly, if they make a move at the deadline for a defenseman, I could really see Dallas winning this year. I really like their team. We've been talking about their forwards. I do think they're missing like a top four defenseman right now, to be quite honest with you. I really like Heiskanen with Lindell. Suter, I would love to see Suter like kind of take more of a third pairing role instead of being in that top pair. Sorry, the top four. I like Niels Lundqvist back there too. They got a nice depth defenseman in Yanni Hakanpää who hits, blocks shots. Another guy that you'll probably hear his name a lot this season. You're talking about Logan Stankoven coming up, is Thomas Harley on defense, man. He's a pretty good young player, played with the Steelheads in the OHL. I could see him like going into the third pair, maybe even taking away some of Suter's minutes in the top four. And like you said, like Ottinger's a great goalie. I just have a feeling that Dallas's time is coming, and I could totally see it happening this year.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. I've been on the Dallas bandwagon this whole podcast, so I got to stick on the Dallas bandwagon right now. The other thing too is DeBoer. He's a local Kitchener guy, so why not root for them, right? Outside of the fact that they're in the same conference as my Calgary Flames, so but realistically, Calgary's not sniffing a Stanley Cup anytime within the next few years, and Dallas is such a wagon of the team. There's such a complete team. When you look at their forward group, when you look at their defensive group, when you look at their goaltending, it's going to be hard for them.
Going to the conference finals last year too, man. They were kind of right there. You know what I mean? Vegas also obviously really good team. I think Dallas is hungry for that cup, man.
It's going to be hard for them not to be a Stanley Cup favorite this whole season. So that wraps up, though, the first episode of the Point to Point NHL recap show. Mark, it's been a good one. What are your thoughts on this first podcast? You feeling happy about this one or what?
Definitely happy with kind of what we were able to cover in this episode. Just talking over the past, this 45 minutes to an hour or so. Getting me really excited for the season next week. Haven't really caught a lot of preseason action, to be quite honest with you. I kind of like watching it more near the end of the preseason because you get more of the actual NHL rosters playing. So I'm definitely going to be catching some games later this week and this weekend. I'm super excited, man, to do this podcast every week, kind of just talk about what's going on. Curious to see how good my predictions end up being. Usually they're not nearly as good as I think they're going to be. But I mean, we got some exciting teams this year, man. Like we were talking about, there's some teams that are going to miss the playoffs that we're going to be like, what the heck, man? I thought these guys were like a pretty good team, but excited, honestly, too, to watch Montreal. It's kind of just like you don't really have huge expectations for them. You just want the young guys to grow. So it's a little bit of like an anxiety relief. You know what I mean? Not having that pressure of like your team making the playoffs, but kind of just getting to sit there and enjoy it. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's going to be a great season. It's going to be a great time doing this podcast. As you said, it's going to be every week. So tune in next week and we'll have all the news from week 1 of the NHL season and any breaking news that continues to come out. So thanks for listening to episode 1 and see you guys all next week.